Today on the Reluctant Entrepreneur podcast, we're joined by Anders Boulanger, CEO and founder of Engageify, professional speaker, performance expert, author of Engage First, and once a magician who learned early how to captivate an audience and turn attention into connection. For nearly 2 decades, Anders has merged performance, psychology, and human interaction into a business that helps companies re-humanize engagement in a world dominated by screens, automation, and distraction. Through his work with some of the world's fastest growing brands, Anders has helped teams capture attention, deepen trust, and drive real results, whether it's on a trade show floor, on virtual stages, or in everyday sales interactions. We'll unpack how a physics degree and a childhood filled with performing magic became the foundation for a business rooted in engagement strategy, explore why engagement is today's most critical competitive advantage, and discover how leaders can create meaningful connection in an increasingly noisy world. My conversation with Anders begins right now. Stick around. Hey, Anders, thanks for joining me. I'm so glad you're here today.
I'm pumped to be here. That intro and everything, I'm excited. So,
gets you going. I have to hear it a lot. So it's only going to get a little bit into your head. It's deep into mine. So that's the risks and the pitfalls of hosting a podcast. But you know what that's like.
Yeah, for sure.
Take me back to your earliest memories of performing when you started as a magician, as a kid, and share how that world first taught you about capturing attention. I know children like to capture attention. That's just native for kids.
I think that's really how a lot of magicians become magicians, is that they realize I can get attention by doing this, right? And so I got a Fisher-Price magic set when I was 5 years old, and I have it downstairs actually, and it's, just real simple stuff, a lot of things self-working. But I performed it at kindergarten, for show and tell. That was kind of my first non-family performance. And of course, everyone wants to know how to do it, right?
Of course.
And the mystery, the mystique of magic brings even more attention to it, because it's like there's something amazing happens. And so, early on, you're kind of taught that, like, oh, that's good, learn more of that. And it's a little pat on the back to keep going. And I think early on it was really about, a kid's ego, right? And getting the attention and learning these skills and these different tricks. And it wasn't until I was much older that I realized there's more to it, and there's kind of, lessons we can draw from it. But that's how I got started doing the, like, for my friends, and then doing birthday parties and doing small fairs and festivals as I got older and older.
As I'm born and raised in California, so I grew up going to Disneyland quite a bit. And my favorite part of Disneyland, beyond the roller coasters and all that, was walking down Main Street and going into the magic shop. And I think even today they still have a magic shop. And there was usually a well-seasoned, older guy or gal that was the magician, and their job was to sell you the trick, right? So they would get out a deck of cards or make a coin disappear or balls under a cup disappear, whatever, classic stuff. And I was looking at that like, if I could buy that, I will be the popular kid in school, right? Because it's amazing. It's magic, right? It's magic in a box. And I would get it and I would bring it home, and I couldn't wait to open it up and read the instructions. And 100% of the time, Anders, I was so disappointed, because basically it was do this without anyone noticing.
Right.
That's pretty much what the instructions were. Sleight of hand, which I was too young to know what sleight of hand meant. But it was basically sleight of hand, or, have them look over there and do this. I'm like, oh, it was so disappointing. I wanted it to be magic in a box. I wanted the ball to actually disappear, not just to turn the cup over fast enough that the ball didn't fall out, right? I mean, it was just whatever the trick was. Or even a trick deck of cards, that where every other card was cut a tiny bit
Hey,
short. So
let's
when you
not
fanned
give away
it,
too many tricks here, Mike.
oh, I
Okay,
know this is Disneyland
shoo.
quality here.
Okay,
This is
okay, all right,
Disneyland
all right.
quality here, right? And I didn't take that oath, Anders. You did, so you can neither
Yeah, well,
confirm nor deny, right? But
trying to defend it here, but
I
yeah, okay.
know, I know.
Yeah.
In fact, I've stumbled across lately some, and this is probably way overboard, but some what seem like professional magicians basically on YouTube showing how it works.
Yeah.
And even that, well, more impressive than the Disneyland, card tricks in a box, still becomes disappointing when you learn the tell. Only because it takes away the artistry.
Yeah.
To me, it's not. To me, I don't have a lot of appreciation for boxes that manipulate something mechanically. I like the art of illusion. I have a really good friend of mine who's a close-up musician, right? And that's what he does. He performs at Magic Castle regularly, and he's in a close-up room. And that takes super skill. That's not normally filled with trick gadgets. It's normally
Right.
stuff you could grab out of someone's kitchen drawer and
Yeah.
make disappear. That is total dedication to the craft of magic.
What you're talking about here, Mike, kind of makes me think of a couple things. One of them being, the idea that usually the secret is so simple,
Yeah.
it is disappointing. It is
Yes.
disappointing. So the
Exactly.
idea that simplicity wins.
See,
The
they're coming
idea
to
that-
arrest me. They're coming to arrest me
Yeah,
for giving
okay.
away a secret, right?
That's right. That's
They're
right.
coming.
That could be, yeah.
Yeah.
But the idea that, simplicity wins in a sense that is why it's chosen as the secret. It's going to work. It's very straightforward. And we often look for a much more complicated answer than, so everyone wants it to be a lot more complicated, right? And then the other side of it is that the fact that the secret is sometimes kind of lame, kind of like not exciting.
Yeah.
And one of my mentors many years ago said to me, he said, Anders, you and I both know the secret's not a big deal. But as magicians, treating the secret as the biggest deal, right? As precious. That's what makes magic special.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's kind of some things that we can look at and draw upon is that, making a bigger deal out of something, can bring attention to it, can, even if it is the mystery side of it, and also simplicity being a tool for engagement as well. And so those are things that we do speak on and we can unpack if we choose.
To that point, at what point did performing for fun and paying for college turn into something that you realized that you could actually build a business around?
Well, I think there was always a part of me who wanted to do magic for a living, but I had to I did a please the parents degree, is what I said. So I had the Bachelor of Science in Physics, and so I wasn't going to run away to the circus. That was kind of the agreement that we kind of had. So I did do that. When I was young, single guy, didn't have a lot of expenses. It didn't take too much to be able to pay for, my lifestyle at that point. But it was once I started actually building out my business where I was using magic more than just a means of entertainment, but there was a higher and better use of that skill set. And for me, that's when I started working and doing trade shows. I was able to actually use that skill set to stop crowds of people and entertain them, but also educate them about my client and their solution. And so now I was in the marketing department and then asking for qualified buyers in the crowd, which the salespeople loved. And all of these things started kind of clicking together and you're realizing, oh, wow, I'm not just a magician. I can actually use this skill set for something that, can further other businesses' goals, right?
Yeah, you're
And
actually
so
leveraging the attention you're getting and redirecting it to your client, right? So you're still seeking attention, but for a different motivation. You're not selling tickets to a magic show, although you're being paid to do it. You're not selling tickets to a magic show. It's not about Anders. It's about your client. You talked earlier about your physics education. How did that education influence your thinking about human behavior and communication and engagement?
Can I say not at all?
Not at
It's,
all. Okay.
that's not a good answer for your question, but
No, it's a great
my
answer because
my
what I'm hearing is it's a deeper connection, not necessarily following laws of physics. It's relational. That's what I'm hearing from that answer. That
yeah, yeah,
it's
like
connection.
I joke with people that I took physics degree so that I had to understand the laws of physics so I could break them, like as a joke,
Yeah,
around
yeah,
the magic
right.
side of things. But I mean, that was something I enjoyed in school and that sort of thing. I did take theater actually in as well as kind of like if I was in the arts faculty, I would have had a minor in theater. But so I did bring that away from
So God
in
gave you
terms
a
of the
full left
performance side.
brain and a full right brain. I mean, you're
Yeah.
not like one or the other. You're
You know,
both.
it is kind of funny like that. I am left-handed. These one of those kind of left hand, right brain kind of things. But yeah, I was always strong in the logical side of things, and then I did like the arts and the theater. So
And
yeah,
that
it's a
probably
little bit
helped
of
you
a.
and make the connection to how to get attention, to how to
I,
engage people, right? That probably
I
led you to connect the dots rather than just being a performer forever, rather than joining the circus, to use your words.
Yes, and I mean I think I speak business better
Yeah.
because of that logical side of things, and I connect with business people better that way. I do have a lot of performer friends that may be so much of an artist that they can never really get behind the other side of it, right? To get to work on the business side, and one of the things was always shared with me is show business, show's 4 letters, business is 8, right? So it was always a lot of focus on that side of it as opposed to just the arts or just the performance side.
So continue your journey with me. We talked about you were a magician as a young child, and that
Yeah.
helped you get popular and got attention on you on the playground and all that. You started. It eventually helped you through college and all that, and then at some point you founded Engageify. So tell me the story how you went from being a performing magician for the purpose of showing your skills and getting attention for yourself to actually to the founding of Engageify, or what would become Engageify.
Yeah, well, and we kind of went through a few names at first, but I did start specializing in doing the trade shows for companies. So that was, the client would call, say they have a show coming up, and they would work us into the booth. We'd have a performance area, and then we'd customize the message, and then we would do the performances at the show, and then typically they'd have a few shows throughout the year. So we kind of rinse and repeat. I got so busy doing that for companies and generating leads because the beautiful thing about trade shows is all the other exhibitors that maybe aren't enjoying the same attention, they get to then watch it happen and they might come and get a business card at the end of the day, right? So I was able to generate more and more business, and I ended up hiring other what we call infotainers, other people like myself, people who trained with my mentor, people that I had trained, and so we started kind of building out the company in that sense. And it wasn't, we were originally called the Infotainers,
Yeah.
and that was kind of about, hey, look at us, we're the Infotainers, right? Like look what we can do for you. But when Engageify happened, we rebranded during COVID because everything shut down events
Yeah.
wise. So things got real slow. I had been recommended by a marketing company to rebrand to more of an engagement company just because there was much more we could do from that angle. And the Infotainers was so performance based that it didn't lend itself as much. And I can kind of talk about how that changed. But when we kind of stumbled upon the idea of Engageify, it was like, ooh, like that. So we're making, trade show booths or events more engaging, or we can help make your teams more engaging. And that's when our trainings came in and that sort of thing. So that's really kind of where it was born, was out of the pandemic. And then we were able to rebrand and launch and go from there.
How did the blending of information and entertainment and infotainment and all of that, how did that blending really become your differentiator? Was there a moment where you said, you took that pivot, right, when you created
Yeah.
Engageify, rather than an infotainer. What led you to that differentiator? And I know you mentioned that someone recommended that you concentrate more on engagement, but what was there a aha moment? Was it just because no one else was buying tickets to magic shows back then? Because of the
Yeah.
logistical stuff, or what?
Well, we were definitely still in that same space. I mean, that blending of entertainment and information was kind of what we were doing. We found ourselves to be very good at doing that, because there's a certain balance, Mike, that has to be done, because sometimes things can be done cheesy, right? Like,
Yeah.
in fact, we use the term infotainer because if we say trade show magician, people automatically think
puts you in a
rabbits and
box.
hats and
Yeah.
cheesy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and that's not the case. And when they watch the way that we do it, and we're talking about, the prospect's problems, and we're framing this idea of here they are at point A, and then what happens if something changes, and, there's this kind of an arc, and they get to point B to where they are successful and they don't have that problem. All of the, if you will, magic tricks follow that format, so that we're always talking about what's in it for them, right? We're always talking about that unique perspective that the company that hired us can offer their prospects. And so all of that is kind of, we got really good at framing ideas that way. And when it's done that way, people kind of can really get behind it, right? So that was kind of that infotainment side of things, and how that kind of came together, as you were mentioning.
Let's talk business in general. You and I share at least one thing. I'm not a magician, but I'm in the very technical world professionally, the electronics manufacturing space. And when I started my company, I had a really good technical acumen. I knew nothing about business, but I figured, well, you should know both. At least I already know what I thought was the harder side was the technical. I misjudged that. The harder side was the business side. But I figured, how hard could it be, right? Which is another red flag. What was the hardest early mistake that you made while building your company? And what did you learn from it? Now, you already had the magician side down, so you were accomplished there. How hard was building the company and mistakes and all that?
I think I was lucky in the way that I was doing all right, but I stumbled upon a gentleman who had hired me at a trade show years earlier, and he had brought me in to pitch his client on trade show magic. And so I came in and did such a bad job of sales in front of this group that the man kind of said, "Look, you need help." That was horrible. And that was a bit of a gut punch at the time.
I'm assuming your magic was good, but there was no conversion of any sort, right?
Yeah, there was no call to action. There was no, this kind of like sign them up right then and that sort of thing. And I think at that time too, I know that C-level people, very direct people, intimidated me a lot, and so it was kind of, I'd shrivel up a little bit in front of,
you didn't have that confidence. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, that's part of experience. That's part of getting older. That's part of a lot of things. But this individual said, "Let me coach you." Right. And so that man's been my business coach for the last 11 years.
Wow.
So I'm lucky that I found him early enough, because he's the one who's groomed me up to be able to speak at that higher level, to be able to, do business and to be able to just be on top of what I do. So I'm sure there's other mistakes I've made, but early on, I did not have any systems in place. I was doing and again, the idea of the reluctant entrepreneur, I was doing my taxes because I'm in Canada, and because it was just all kind of part of my personal. I was in June the following year, not April. I had to have it by the end of June. And then I was finding out how I did like the year before,
Oh,
right? Like, like it's so far lagging,
yeah,
right?
right.
I had no bookkeeping. I had
Imagine if
no,
you were a pilot and your instruments were 6 months behind,
right,
right?
right.
Yeah.
Like just so in the dark, right? And thought it was completely normal, for me it was, right? And so that's kind of, that's how sort of, ignorant I was as a business person. I think that's a good example of that.
Ignorance can be bliss. I was ignorant when I started my company. I didn't realize that 80% of all businesses statistically fail. And I'm grateful for that ignorance because that probably would have scared the hell out of me and I wouldn't have done it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You talk a lot about the attention economy. How would you describe that to someone who hasn't heard of that term before?
Yeah, well, I definitely, if you have been on your phone lately, you probably realize there's all kinds of ads, videos, algorithms, everything is vying for your attention. And what I talk about is that, the in-person interactions we're having. And by the way, we talk about AI in my book, artificial intelligence, but then we also talk about authentic interactions. That's the AI that we really talk about in the book. And so that idea that we need to kind of up our game in terms of interacting with people, because look what we're competing with.
Yeah.
On the phones, with technology, all of that. We've lost a lot of soft skills because we just don't use them as much. We have younger generations growing up who have never developed those skill sets. So that's really, engage first. The idea behind it is it's like, it doesn't matter what doesn't matter if you're trying to educate or sell or whatever it is, until you engage them first. It's just a waste of time and energy and money, right? So
Yeah.
people aren't paying attention. No one's gonna buy, right? So no one's gonna.
Well, you've become your father when you start a sentence with kids these days, right? But I'll say it anyway. Kids these days. The difference between the younger generation and perhaps our generation or certainly mine. I am what would be considered a technology immigrant. Technology that we use regularly today was born well after I was born. I had my company for 4 years before the internet came out, and we witnessed all that. Young people today were born with screens, and they seek out information differently. They communicate differently than we do. My generation thinks that's all terrible, which it's not, but it's just different. But there's a big difference in the way one has to grab attention and become an authority in their space and become an influencer in their space. It's different today than it was before. Before, it was just run an ad, say some outrageous things, which may or may not even be accurate. And people in my generation, if it was on TV, it was real. If it was on the news, it was real. It was true. If it was in an ad, it was probably real, probably true. Young generation, they don't even see that anymore. Their way of getting attention is, it's a lot more competitive today for young eyeballs than it was for ours. So you're right on it. What are the core principles you teach people to capture and hold attention in a otherwise very distracted world?
You know what? The way I usually sum that up best, especially for the listener listening, is it's an acronym I call SAVE You. So SAVE and then you.
You.
Just the
Okay.
letter U.
You're cheating on you, but yeah, I feel like there should be two more points there. But okay.
But
You got to
we'll
pass.
talk about why that's the case. We'll get there. So the S, and this kind of comes back to how we started, is for simplify, right? To make things simple. And so my original acronym was actually longer, Mike, but then I thought I should listen to my own advice. So I'd have
there you go. Simplify. Yeah.
Okay. So however we can make things easier to consume. So the fact that I'm using an acronym is one of those ways of doing it, right? If you can make something rhyme, if you can use a metaphor, those are good ways to simplify. Okay.
Sure.
The A, and we've touched on this a little bit too, is authority, right? So how you frame yourself, whether that is if you have letters at the end of your name, how you're introduced. You set me up beautifully with the introduction here, Mike. So with that piece, people are already kind of, oh, what's this guy know, right? So how you talk. If everything I said, Mike, kind of went up at the end like this, you start wondering if I really knew my stuff or not.
Yeah, to
right?
me, that's a question. Yeah, that's just missing a question mark. Yeah.
Some people talk like that. So
I know people
we
like
have
that.
to be careful that we create that authority. Authenticity kind of works into that too, right? When people are real, people just know it and they can feel it, So that kind of stacks on that. So that's the S and the A. The V is for varying the senses or visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. And so that's the idea that we all, learn and listen in different ways. We have different preferred systems, they call it.
Yep.
And so the idea is that when you're talking to a big group of people, you don't know what they are. So if you start saying things and seeing, like, can you see this? How many people feel that? Blah, blah, blah. Changing those types of words engages different types of people. If you're just one-on-one, you could just use the one that you think they use.
Yeah.
So that's to help people tune back in. So that's the SAV. The E is emotion. So storytelling is, of course, huge in business. Storytelling is a great shortcut to create emotion. But I really believe that we need to make people feel something so that it can be remembered, right? If it's just everything's flat, business, cut and dry, buttoned up, it's just kind of boring. Right?
Yeah.
But when people, so that's part of why when we do magic at a trade show booth, people they feel something. There's surprise, there's elation, there's laughter, there's mystery, there's all kinds of things that they're feeling that allows that messaging to actually be remembered because we're creating that peak experience through emotion.
Yeah.
So that's the S, the A, the V, the E, and then the U is actually for being you focused. So just what's in it for me, WIIFM, everyone's favorite radio station. So keeping it on what do they want or how can they avoid what they don't want, right? It's the survival instincts that are built into us.
Sure.
We want to eat and not be eaten. And
more of what we desire, less of what we hate.
Exactly.
Yeah. Or
exactly.
fear.
And if you ever are in a talk or you're doing something and you're like, I'm losing them, this save you is like, okay, am I doing all these things? Because that's being able to enable you to recapture that attention.
Yeah, that's excellent. Can you share maybe a past defining moment where better engagement, not just awareness, made a measurable business difference?
Well, it's funny. I just came back from AWS reInvent, which is a show in Las Vegas. And I was helping out a first-time client, and they
AWS, like Amazon Web Services? That AWS?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And they, this company they had a little 20 by 20 booth, and they had a little bit of a presentation theater in it with like 8 seats or something like that. And they actually hired us on a week before the event. So it was just kind of kismet because they saw us at another show the week before. And they said, I think we need you. And to know what, just awareness, people just walking by, seeing you, right? Just because you're seen or you're remembered, that sort of thing. But when you actually have something that demands people to be involved,
right,
and people want to be a part of it. And so, we got in there and doing our thing. There was a lot of uncertain people about what we were all about because we were kind of brought in last minute. And so there's the CMO and the CEO and all the C-level. They were all kind of like
all the people that formally intimidated you.
Right. And it's funny that we're talking about this, Mike, just as the, let's call it the evolution of the entrepreneur or, as you go through business. I just remember not giving a crap what they thought about me because I'm like, I'm going to rock this booth. And if you don't like it, you're stupid.
Yeah.
I didn't think that.
No, I know. There's an inside voice, outside voice, but I've had a similar conclusions.
And it was just this kind of, everyone else got all uptight when the CEO was coming. And I'm like, I got this. So it is, I think when you get either you're operating in your special talent and you just are so confident with that, or you get old enough that you just know what you know. Right. And I think that's kind of a nice place to be for people. And if people are listening to this podcast, kind of being unsure, maybe it's just going to just give yourself more time. I think be gentle on yourself.
Yeah.
Being an entrepreneur is tough.
Yes. How did you build your internal team culture around engagement, especially when so many companies focus primarily on the metrics and automation? Everyone's looking at KPIs and workflow automation, all that stuff.
So for internally and externally, our core values guide us. So when we look at the idea of how we are engaging, we want to make sure that our external customers and our internal customers, meaning our staff, they're kind of, we come at it from the same angle, same side of things. So do I have real KPIs for that kind of engagement? We're a pretty small shop, so we don't really need to send out massive.
You see it when you
surveys.
see it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And we're able to be able to do a lot of soft touches in person and be able to have our fingers on the pulse, so to speak, if that makes sense.
Yeah. How do you teach or at least evaluate emotional intelligence within an organization, whether it's your organization or a client?
Yeah, wow. We do use the DISC assessment as not necessarily emotional intelligence per se, but to be able to categorize people so that we have a better idea of how they like to be dealt with, if that makes sense. And for those listening, there's tons out there, Myers-Briggs and, Strength Finders is a little bit different, but all those different types of assessments, they are quite handy and they are pretty amazing when you, start digging into that stuff. So that's really helped us just kind of understand people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
As a leader yourself, how have you had to evolve your own communication style over time? I'm sure there's a difference between standing on a playground and impressing the kids. There's a difference between standing at a trade show booth and impressing attendees. And there's a difference of not just impressing, but communicating with these different groups. I'm sure you've had to modify and tweak and pivot your own communication style. So tell me what kind of changes did you have to make from your earlier career to what you've learned after all these years?
I think we've actually touched on a little bit of this, and I'll kind of come back around on it.
Yeah.
That C-level piece, mm-hmm. right? When you're talking to the C-level, it took me a while to realize that directness, is just kind of efficiency in action, right? Like they just want to get things done. And so I noticed that when I speak to a C-level, I'm going to do the same style back to them, right? This is kind of the platinum rule, not treat them how you want to be treated, but how do they want to be treated, right? So, and so with all of that too, typically we do talk about rapport as something in our trainings. And so if you have a similar tone of voice as the other person, you're going to have greater connection, right? So I think a lot of these things, just like the DISC assessment, just like understanding that people are different and want to be communicated in their preferred manner, visual, auditory, kinesthetic being another way to cut and slice and dice it, is just being more and more aware of those things earlier as I go into a situation. Whereas I might have intellectually known it, but not ever applied it in the field or as soon. And I think that's kind of one of those things that just experience, practice, comes hand in hand.
Sure. Was there ever a moment, perhaps maybe at a trade show or if you lost a client or some kind of pivot that fundamentally changed how you operate today versus how you started out?
I mean,
The rabbit
I
didn't
would
come
say
out of the hat like it was supposed to, or
that's right.
the dove died.
Fire the rabbit.
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
done. Not fundamentally changed. I mean, there's a lot of little things where like, ooh, don't
Little
do that
tweaks.
again,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yes, yeah.
more tweaks, more than major shifts or anything like that. I do remember one time early on though, and this was where I was going to that, leveraging myself up to not just selling my own services, but selling our other infotainers. And there was a learning curve to that because now it wasn't just me. Oh, they had all the choice of these other people. And I was offering the choice of all these people
Sure.
and realizing that was a mistake that because they didn't have the context to be able to choose
Yeah.
or make
Yeah.
I wanted them to freely choose, but they're like, I don't know who's better. So then I
They
stopped
need a
doing that.
professional opinion, like from
Right.
you.
And I said, here's your guy, right? Like, here's the person. This is the best person who's available right now. Right. And here you go. And then
Yeah.
it went way smoother doing that. So that whole, paralysis by analysis thing is very true. And the classic jams of jar experiment too, where you're familiar with that one, Mike, right? Where there's like 24, and they at a flea market or whatever, or a sale,
Yep.
and they hardly sell any, and
Right.
then they bring it down to like 8 or something like that,
Yeah.
and they sell way more just because
Yeah.
people just couldn't
Less
decide.
choice. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, that's right.
So as we are all overly aware, engagement isn't just about live events anymore. It's virtual, hybrid. There's AI influences now and everything. How have you adapted your company strategy to that? You talked earlier in the pandemic, you had to do some virtual stuff, because
Yeah,
live events just went away like overnight.
yeah.
But a lot of that has stuck with us. So how do you handle the various forms of engagement delivery that maybe in the earlier days would have just been showing up,
Right,
live?
right. In the old days, showing up was good enough, right?
Yeah, sure.
Well,
Everyone showed
we
up.
found it
Yeah.
pretty quickly during the pandemic that you can only be on so many Zoom calls in a day, and you start kind of going a little batty,
Yeah.
right? And there was a lot of people, well, working from home, not having great setups, which is one thing too. Here we are, we both got color and the light, and we're all looking good and everything.
Yeah.
And so one of the things we really pivoted to hard was during the pandemic was we're going to teach people how to be good on virtual. So we called it virtual engagement. So we built out a course, and we started doing webinars. We started doing live virtual trainings for companies that would teach them the skills and the equipment and the tools to be able to use. And technology since then has gotten better and better. And it's kind of like we don't need as many as fancy gadgets as we first did. But one of the things that hasn't changed is we still need to give of ourselves to the camera, to the give virtual energy, right? And here I am talking to myself in a room, right? Like you're there, Mike. You can hear me, but sometimes when we're on virtual, we don't realize how flat we come off, right?
Yeah.
Like it's so we need to. So there's kind of like a performance side of it that will always be required. And it's the same in person too, but usually with an audience, it kind of pumps you up a little bit.
Sure.
And so virtual, we need to remind ourselves to do that. So there was a whole bunch of different skills and different things that we kind of would walk through. But the virtual engagement, that was needed. And we did a lot of virtual emceeing at the time too, because people realized just one boring speaker to another was not going to cut it. They needed someone to kind of bring them back up, right?
Yeah.
And go, hey, all right, now we're going to do this. And everyone wakes up, for a moment, and then you can go on with the rest of the virtual program.
Yeah, I was fortunate. I do a lot of public speaking on entrepreneurship, but mostly on my professional world, electronics. And I cut my teeth on that way before there were virtual events, right? There was no Zoom or GoToMeeting, in the early days. And I kind of perfected my craft live, which really helped me because I host a lot of webinars now, and the platforms we use for webinars, I don't see a single face, right? I mean, everyone is just a name on a screen. And at first, it was like, can I do this? Because there is zero feedback. When I speak publicly, I look for 3 people in the audience every single time. One is a person who's kind of head nodding, kind of lethargic, maybe falling asleep. I zero in on that person. I zero in on the person who's disagreeable. Every time you say something, they're kind of like, no. And then I find someone who's very engaged and seemingly excited to be there. That's kind of my muse. So I look at and when I see the person who's lethargic and about to fall asleep doing that, I will either stop talking for a moment because silence actually startles people, or I'll change my cadence or change my volume, or I'll do something that just changes the pace and wakes them up. And when I see someone who's looking disagreeable, I'll engage them. And that person becomes an ally of mine. You know, I'll say, if you were the disagreeable person, every time I say something that's maybe a little controversial from a tech standpoint, I'll go, right, Anders? Yeah, and all of a sudden, you know, they're the perceived smartest person in the room because I'm checking with them. But when all those tricks went away, when I literally stood in front of a camera and or a teleprompter and saw nobody, not even like this. So
I know it's tough.
It does take a lot of confidence in oneself. And
yes, and
there's an element of professionalism, performer in there.
Right. That feedback loop's not there, right? And that's where you have to just know, like you said, that confidence that, you know, hey, what I got is good. And, you know, there's going to be people out here who are digging this, right? And that just to truck on through. Yeah.
From your experience, what's the most, or what's the biggest engagement mistake organizations are still making today?
Good question. Now, I do have to...
Other than not hiring you.
Well,
that would be a mistake.
I was going to say, sometimes too, I have to almost define my type of engagement I talk about, right? And we have been talking about that. The idea that it's about capturing attention and building connection, as opposed to sometimes in HR world, engagement is about, you know, are these people plugged into their work, right?
Yeah.
So in terms of the engagement that I talk about, I feel that there is too much of an emphasis on, I shouldn't say too much, but the emphasis on so much about what you say, right? And this is the content, this is the, you know, knowing your stuff, the subject matter experts and everything like that. And there's not enough of an emphasis on how they say it. Meaning, you know, presentation trainings are not the soft skills because they're not hardcore, they're ignored, right? And so that's where, again, I mean, when we're brought into these different events, sometimes what we do is we're just setting up someone for success by creating that engagement. But it would do the company wonders to actually train their booth staff so that they train their presenters, I should say, so that they can hold court as well, right? Sometimes we build a crowd of people, Mike, and we go, here's the presenter, here you go. And then the presenter is so bad, the crowd just goes away. Right. Or slowly deteriorates. And we feel bad. And maybe it was a bit of a bait and switch, you know, from the audience's point of view. But at the same time, you know, this idea of what you're trying to get across, you know, how we say it, how we engage, that's really where where the juice is, right?
Sure,
this is where it happens. Yeah.
If you had to give one simple piece of advice to any entrepreneur that they could actually start tomorrow to improve engagement with their audience, what would that be?
Just one thing. You know, the one thing that I see most don't do is going back to that S and save you, is the simplify. The complexity, you know, just when you look sometimes at marketing copy on a website or something, like they'll sometimes give me that to say about a company, you know, about a product. And I'm like, you want me to say that aloud? That whole, you know, just keeping things relatable and simple and easy to understand can just go a long, long way.
That's great advice. A mentor of mine told me we used to be obnoxious advertisers. We were braggadocious. It was, look at us, look at us, look at us. We are the shiny object in the corner. We're the best. Everyone else sucks and all that. And then at some point we got tired of the sound of our own voice. And her advice to me was, if you want to sell your product, quit talking about your product. Nobody cares. Connect with the customer on an emotional level. Connect with them on something they care about. So our product solves very specific problems, and within the electronics manufacturing industry, talk about their problems. Talk about best practice approaches to their problem. Not your product. They'll get that. They're smart people, but so we radically changed the way that we engage customers. We engage potential customers through providing value and education, and not by specifications and marketing copy like you were given. It's really about having it, in our world, far cry from being a good magician, but in our world, it's also about entertaining. It's about having them be transformed to a space where they don't want to leave. They want to hear the next anecdote. They want to hear the next story. They want to hear a solution. And then you become an authority. And then I hate the word influencer, because when you hear influencer these days, you think of, Paris Hilton and, Kim Kardashian and whatever. Right. I'm talking about an authority-based influencer. And in your world, you are an influencer because you're influencing people to listen to the story, to watch your act, to let in any sales message that is part of that performance. And I think too many people think everyone's interested in everything they build and how they build it and how well they build it. And everyone is saying that, right? There's no differentiation at all. How do you personally prepare for speaking, or before any speaking gig or podcast or client engagement? Is there a mindset or a ritual that you rely on before you take the stage?
I love that question, Mike.
Or something you drink, or
Yeah. So typically, there'll be a few things I do. I'll normally do vocal warm-ups. Now I've got a cold, and you can probably hear that in me. But
you've got a good radio voice, though. You do have a good voice. Yeah,
it's better right now because of my cold. I'll tell you. But yeah. So, but that's one of those things that by warming up your voice, you make your own voice a little more radio-like. Okay, so some people don't like the sound of their voice, right? And so we have to kind of get over ourselves. But that's one of those things. So the vocal warm-up. There'll be some humming exercises, some tongue twisters, which helps you with your, be able to enunciate properly. Yeah. And typically I'll do maybe a bit of a physical warm up too, maybe a stretch or something just to kind of loosen up, and just so that my mind and my body are relaxed, and, kind of my go-to kind of, I'm going to need them, right? I'm going to need them when I present. And then I also will typically have a little lozenge called Vocal Zone, which is another voice kind of specialized lozenge. And then I typically will listen to certain music that I've found to be a good kind of pump up for myself. So years ago, I was at an event, had a really great trade show with a certain company, and the Foo Fighters were playing at the party at the end of the show. So now for me, listening to the best of the Foo Fighters really takes me back to that moment, right? So we're using it, what you'd call an auditory anchor in neurolinguistic programming, to kind of bring you back to that place. So, layering up those things, those combinations. Typically, whenever I put on a suit, jacket, or coat, I kind of will straighten up, and I become, it's more like it's showtime. Right.
Yeah,
so all of these pre-show rituals kind of stack on top of each other. And that's what gets me into the mode. Everyone's going to have their own. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I got 3 rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Short questions, short answers. What's the one book, tool, or practice that you've recommended most of this year?
Book, tool, or practice, yes?
Yeah.
I really like 10x is easier than 2x by Dan Sullivan. So
Excellent. All right.
Yeah.
I will put a link to my audience that's watching or listening. I'll put a link to that book in the show notes. Second question. What's the one thing you used to believe about engagement that you no longer believe?
Oh. I think I used to think it was a long time ago. It was all about being big all the time, right? And you yourself talked about it's the pattern interrupts. It's the contrast, right? It can be when you get quiet. It can be it's the changes. But we kind of think engaging is always I'm engaging. Like I'm big, I'm playing big.
Yeah.
So I think and I think a lot of people still think that a little bit too, and then they don't want to be over the top, and
Right.
so it kind of makes them not want to have that. So that would be it.
I guess you have to read the audience. You have to read the room, right? And know,
Do what needs to be done.
do what needs to be done in a manner that they would like it delivered to. Finish this sentence. Engagement is great when it's blank and dangerous when it's blank.
Mike, these are devious. Okay.
Devious questions, yes.
Yes.
So engagement is great when what?
When blank, yeah. Well, I want to say engagement is great when it works.
No, that's fair.
which we hope it works all the time, but at the same time, you do have to figure out your audience. Sometimes you're not being who you need to be.
Yeah.
And engagement is dangerous. Engagement is dangerous when you don't have it, I guess. I mean, like
a poser. If you read the 10-second guide, Engagement for Dummies book, if there is such a thing, and maybe it's saccharine, maybe it's not authentic, I would think that trying to be engaging when you're not, but thinking you are, I would think that's pretty dangerous.
I like that.
I think that's kind of what I heard from your answer, like when it's not.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
we had
to collaborate on that one.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. These lightning round, this has been a tough
lightning round. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's never fun to get struck by lightning. My last question for you, and then we're out of time, which I think you might find a little easier. How did you define success when you first started your company, and how do you define it today?
When I first started, it was all about the revenue number, and that's it, right? And then it was kind of like, if I can just hit that,
right,
I'll be happy,
right?
Which is such a classic,
We've all had.
And then
that.
you hit that, and you kind of go, okay, now what? Like,
Yeah.
That you just keep putting that number higher,
Sure.
Or, that's how some people play that game, but it's also kind of like, another great saying is top lines for vanity, bottom lines for sanity, right? Like, what is and what is my burnout feeling? Or like, what is that?
Sure.
Like, get a little more holistic about what does that success look like? And so I think it was a lot more about, what's my personal life looking like in the big picture with my professional life, and start thinking about that as a success as opposed to just that number, trying to hit that number.
It's not a show me the money anymore. Not just that anyway, right? Yeah, very good. By the way, this is episode number 44. The 43 entrepreneurs I spoke with before you, thankfully, all had a different answer from how they used to define success and how they do today. I would worry if everyone said, money. Okay, and now money, because so much. I mean, money does buy things. It does make things possible, but I don't think money is the end game for most people who have been around a little while, right? They learn that. There's happiness and freedom. I've heard all sorts of really high octave answers on that. Well, Anders, it's been a joy. Thank you for being my guest today and holding true, not revealing any magic tricks. But what you talk about is not magic. What you talk about is real, solid business advice on how to engage your potential customers and have meaningful conversations and hold their attention and be authentic. And none of that to me is magic. That is, I mean, the results are magical. You use magic to accomplish that goal, but I think they're very sound, very savvy, very wise business strategies. And I really appreciate you sharing some of those business strategies and your journey with me and my audience.
Well, thanks for having me on, Mike. I got to say, this is probably one of the most thoughtful and thought-provoking interviews I've had. So you do a great job here. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And to my audience who would like to get more information on Engageify and Anders, all of his contact information, URL and all that will be in the show notes. If you're watching this on YouTube, look down here where it says show more, and you'll see that information there. If you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app, go to that podcast app when it's safe to do so, and you'll find that information there as well as links to the book that Anders recommended and his own book/books. I'll have those links on there. There we go. Engage first. Engage first, not second, not third, not fourth, first. So Anders, thanks again. Continued success to you, my friend, and maybe I'll check back up with you in a while and track your progress.
I'd love that. Thanks again, Mike. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Well, that's a wrap. Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Reluctant Entrepreneur Podcast. A very special thanks to Anders Boulanger for being my guest on the show. We've been busy, very busy, recording future episodes with fascinating guests, so be sure to subscribe to get notified when new episodes drop. And one personal favor, if you're watching this on YouTube, consider giving us a like and subscribe. These two simple clicks really help us expand our reach. If you're an entrepreneur or know someone who would make a great guest, I'd love to hear from you. Visit reluctantentrepreneur.podcast.com to apply or recommend a guest. You can also reach me directly at mike@reluctantentrepreneur.podcast.com. And a quick shameless plug, if you're interested in my book, The Reluctant Entrepreneur, Anatomy of a Business Startup from Uncertainty to Unstoppable, it's available in paperback and Kindle on Amazon and as an audiobook on both Audible and Amazon. Well, that's it for me today. Thanks again for listening or watching. Until next time, be unstoppable.